up, everybody? It's your boy Dave Noodlez. This is Type 88. We are now recording live from my apartment, and we are doing the calls. There's a lot going on in the world, so unfortunately, Make a Park Radio has been closed until further notice. But shout out to technology, and an old school technology at that. We got our special guest on the other line, and this woman has been all over. She's been following her dreams. She's been making things happen, spreading the word of Christ. She got a lot going on right now, and I'm really excited for her to share her story with you. So we got the one and only Bri Cruz on Type 88. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's definitely an honor.
Of course. I know we met about a year or two ago. You were rocking the stage at one of my favorite churches, CUHOW. So shout out to Pastor Rome, Andrew, Mei Ling, John, everyone out there, Frank. It was really the first church that really made me feel like home, and it's really a family there. And I remember when I saw you just rocking it with Andrew on stage. You killed it.
Thank you.
And you've been killing it. So maybe you could kind of tell me about your musical journey, how you found music, or maybe how music found you.
Okay, so looking back through my journey, I think music's always been a major part of my life. When I was younger, I started writing as a way to kind of release my emotions when I felt like I couldn't communicate or I couldn't have a voice for myself. So it actually started out as poetry, which eventually evolved into me taking that poetry and making it into music. And even in school, I was always involved in musical things like choir and musical theater and things like that. So it's kind of, I would probably say it's just kind of always been a part of me. I think I've taken it the most serious thus far in this season of my life within the last year or two.
That's amazing. And as far as just becoming part of the CUHOW worship team, maybe you could kind of tell us like how that even came to be. Like, did they do like outreach? Did you knock on their door? Maybe you could kind of tell me how that even came together.
So how I got involved with CUHOW worship, I have to kind of give you a backstory to that of how I even got involved with CUHOW. So at the time, I would probably say, looking back, when was this? 2018. It was early 2018. I'm originally from Paterson, New Jersey, so I was attending a church in that area. And at that time, with my spiritual walk, I was kind of feeling stagnant and looking elsewhere for a church where I could grow, because music being a part of my journey, I always felt that there was a greater calling for me to do with music, but with ministry and with God, I felt like He was pulling me out of that church into another church or another season of my life. So as I was church hunting, a friend of mine, a mutual friend of mine, she had added me to a Facebook page that was devoted to all things about Jesus. So it was just kind of like a platform where we could all just send motivational scripture, videos, things that pertain to our faith-based walk. And it was there that I actually befriended a girl named Emily, who introduced me to her church. She actually invited me to CUHOW. And where I was living, it was about an hour drive. So, and then I don't like to drive at all, but I didn't like the thought of driving to New York at that. So I kind of took myself out of my comfort zone, took this an hour, 10-minute drive to visit this church where I didn't know anybody but her. And she served on the worship team. So I remember when I saw pictures, I was like, oh, wow, like she serves on her worship team. I heard her sing. I heard how she sang. And I knew that where I was in the church that I was in prior to that, I wasn't utilizing the gifts that I felt that God had given me. So I decided to be open-minded, check out this church. And I fell in love with the people as soon as I walked through that place. I felt like it was home, just like you said. You feel like the whole CUHOW vibe is just very home-based, very intimate, familial-based. And I fell in love with the church, and I started to commute there. I would go there once a month. And in order to get involved, they have weekly activities, monthly activities going on. There's a protocol on how you get involved on the worship team. Eventually, I moved out there. I ended up living in Emily's home while she was away, which is a whole nother backstory. But
wow.
I had a place to live, so I packed up my stuff, and I took this new journey, being able to move blindly, as I would say, and took this leap of faith, got involved with the worship team, and I've been with them thus far. I would probably say I've been involved with the worship team about a year and a half now.
Amazing.
Yeah, it truly is.
I've been really pushing that, the whole, when you have a calling and you hear the phone ringing, I really push the whole idea of answering the call.
Mhm.
And I really always tell people, I always say, we answer calls from phone numbers we do not know, but yet we refuse to answer the call that God has for us. And
yeah.
I think it's amazing that you answered your calling. You didn't just let it ring, and be like, oh, tomorrow, another day.
Mhm.
You answered it, and you took a leap of faith into the road less traveled, as Robert Frost would say, and look where you are now. It's you've been shining, you've been passing the light to so many people. Every Sunday you give people a reason to sing, and you sing the good word, and it's amazing to see. It's amazing to see.
Thank you.
So moving from Jersey to Staten Island, that's kind of that's from living in Staten Island, Bri. What we normally see, people move from Brooklyn to Staten, and then from Staten to Jersey, and then from Jersey to Florida. That's kind of like the stereotypical 4-step plan. So you flipped it. You went from Jersey to Staten. What bridge did you take? Was it the outer bridge, or was it the Goethals Bridge?
Well, when I first started commuting, I was taking the outer bridge because where Emily lived, she lived closer to the outer bridge.
Got it.
She lived on the other side of the island. But then as I became more comfortable with the different routes that I could take, Goethals Bridge seemed a lot easier for me when it came to commuting.
Gotcha. So here you are going from Patterson to Staten. I think that's really awesome because you really only knew her here, right? Was she really your only plug here?
I would say she was my plug that led. She was my plug that led to many outlets.
She's a great kid.
Yeah.
Her and her whole family.
Mhm.
So you moved to Staten. You don't know one person, and what better place to start meeting people? By coming to CUHOW. Automatically you feel like you're at your favorite cousin's barbecue. Like,
You're right.
It's just so well. You get the coffee, the mug, the hugs. It's just like you're like, what? I gotta go home. You know, like
Mhm.
I think kind of growing up, it would always be like you kind of wait. Like church was kind of stereotyped as, oh, I can't wait to go home. But there, it's like, oh, what? We gotta go home now? Like every time I was there, it
Yeah.
was like, oh, we don't gotta, I don't want to go. Like I'll just stay a little bit longer and just talk, But that's so great to.
Mhm.
So of course, there's some amazing people there at the church. Of course, Andrew Daniel, singer right there, part of the worship team. My boy Frank. So of course, I Am Familia in the building. Maybe you could
Yes.
kind of talk about how that, came to be. Just joining, becoming part of the I Am Familia, and where that led to.
So basically, once I became more involved in church, people started to get to know me, especially, Frank and Andrew. Shout out to them because they're literally my super god brothers,
Shout out.
that have helped me venture through this musical journey. But so when they got whiff that I could sing, it was over for them. And I remember it was summer of 2019, and Frank was working on his TGIF album. I want to say the first one that he released on his birthday.
Yeah.
There was a song that he had kind of in the back. He has so much songs that are just waiting to be released, so many beats and whatnot. So he had this song for several years that he never finished, that he needed a female vocalist on, and he asked me if I could write to it. And literally that same day, I had the verse and the hook. Well, he wrote the hook, but I had sent him the verse with my version of the hook. And we ended up recording in the studio, I believe, either that week or the next week. And that was my first time in the studio. And we were in Joe Wabi's studio. Shout out to Joe Wabi.
Shout out to him.
And that pretty much is when the urge for me the push for me to kind of write even more and start working on an album. So that's pretty much how that unraveled.
That kid is such a blessing, Frank. It's just like
he truly is.
He just naturally blesses people, and I think it's so natural for him. And it's like you think about it, like you meet him, and then Joe Wabi is just a beast. And to be in the studio, you're not like with just an engineer. You're with a guy who makes amazing beats. He writes tracks, he engineers, he masters. So like, you're in good hands like from the beginning. And then you collab on this track, and that's great. They saw something in you, and I think what was great about you, you stepped up to the plate, and you were like, I'm not only gonna sing the part you wanted me to. I got a whole other part. I got this chorus, and people love that. People love when you're unafraid to to share your gift with the world.
Yeah, and I think that's also what motivated him to have me be the first lady of IAM, because he saw how quick I was to write. Like, he could send me a beat, and I don't say this to boast, but I could just work on that day or the next day and have it be like, okay, I got this written. Okay, you want to hop on this track with me, or you want me to just do this by myself? But this is what I have written so far, and I think that really was like the green light for him to be like, okay, she's motivated, she's dedicated, she's committed to writing these songs. I don't have to look for her or depend. She doesn't have to depend on me to help her all the time, and writing and things like that. So it was actually funny looking back, because when he had very vaguely spoke about adding somebody to the IAM Familia, especially being a female. And when he was speaking of the artist, I it's funny because I was in the back seat of his car, so it was me, Ronnie, and him in the car. And he was like, "Oh yeah, so I have an idea for this where I'm gonna sign my first artist." And I'm in the back of my own little world in La La Land. And then Ronnie's like, "Oh yeah, who?" And he was like, "Bri." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What?" So I was kind of like, I was very shocked, but I was also honored and nervous at the same time, but truly humbled to that I was thought of enough to be part of this movement, so to speak.
Yeah, and moving is what you're doing, because over the last month, there's been so much traction. There's been several music videos, several features. Like, it's stuff that I see people do in several years time.
Mhm.
To just look at the last like 60 days for the IAM Familia and be like, damn, like, are they splitting time the way Jesus split bread? Like, because they're making a lot with a little time. I like, did they just turn 2 months into 3 years with all that? So you guys are doing your thing. I was bumping the album all day. There are a lot of bangers on it, and so maybe you could even talk about how you even came up with that the title.
So the title was actually after a long discussion, because I had a series of ideas that I wanted to kind of incorporate with this album, but I wanted to make sure that the title of this album would be something that every song you could kind of, it would be like the sum of all the songs. So with the mirrors, how I saw mirrors was almost like, to me, from my faith-based standpoint, it was, if you look at the world through a secular mirror, you will always be tempted to fall into a spirit of comparison. But if you look in the mirror through a godly perspective, meaning that you know that God loves you, and you want to see yourself the way that God sees you. So the aspect of my album is being able to see myself the way that God sees me, and I incorporate that in my music.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So from hearing the album, and of course knowing that you do worship music, maybe you could tell us, how do you separate worship music, singing the worship music Sundays, and then making secular music, and maybe kind of talk about that for us.
So I normally try not to separate so much, but like looking forward, I do plan on working on a worship album just with people, separately moving forward. But like, I would probably say that I normally try not to separate it, because I don't want to let myself be limited to just being like a worship singer, or just being, having the regular music. But I like to incorporate them both in one, because I want to become more relatable. I want my music to be relatable across all avenues of life, so that everybody can relate to it.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I was hearing it, and it felt, there were, of course, there was worship vibes in it, and then there was just like song vibes, and you blended them both well. It didn't feel like one or the other. It just really felt like you making an album that meant something to you, and it really, I feel like I got to know you a lot better from the album, because in a lot of the tracks, you drop your favorite verse in the Bible verses in the beginning, and then You go in, and
Thank you.
so I would say after playing the project today a lot, my 2 tracks, I Promise You, fire. Like it just you could just kind of dance to it, but it's deep, and it's like confess, maybe you could talk about maybe that one, where you were trying to go with that one.
So I Promise You is actually about my marriage. So I tried to, like I said, I blended both worship and avenues of life because I wanted people to get a feel of who I was as a person. So when I wrote I Promise You, it was just basically reflecting on the vow that I made to be a wife and what my idea of marriage is supposed to reflect.
Awesome. And of course, Nitty's on that. He murders it.
Yeah, always.
And another one I had was No Matter. I've just kept playing it. Maybe you could kind of give us a little background of that one.
So No Matter to me is almost like the Lord will never give up on you, no matter how far you may run, how far you'll go. The Lord is always in pursuit of you. And I believe I started out that song with a Bible verse that had to kind of give people the segue into what the song was going to be about and how I can relate the Bible verse to my own life. But it's like I'm always fulfilled and you are always in constant pursuit of me, no matter how far I run or how far I walk. So that was the concept behind that song.
It's awesome. And maybe we could talk about the intro. You say, "Saved with amazing grace, living a dream. I never have to chase, daughter of a king. The spirit never breaks, never have to live a life in my mistakes." So maybe you could kind of break down that verse for us and maybe even the song Misfit for us.
So when I turned Misfit into a song, it was originally a poem that I had written. And a lot of the stuff looking back were poems originally that I made into songs. And so that section of the song, Saved with Amazing Grace, comes from the verse that I say at the end, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, from Ephesians. And when I say living a dream, I never have to chase because the dream was already imprinted in me. I was already born with it. So I don't have to chase it because you never have to chase what you're born with, what God has called you to do and be. And being a daughter of a king, of course, the spirit never breaks. You have authority in who you are when you're walking with God. And you never have to live in life in your mistakes because he died on the cross for you. So your sins were forgiven no matter how many mistakes you have. So you can walk in grace, you can walk in mercy, and you can walk in authority of who God called you to be.
I love it. That's so awesome.
Thank you.
That's so. You're doing all this, of course, while other things are happening. You're living your life. There's something really big on the way, actually. Two
things.
So yeah. So like, you're pregnant. So did that play a part? Like, does being pregnant and having kids, did that change the way that you created the music?
Now, I actually started working on Mirrors, my album, before I found out I was pregnant. But moving forward, I think as far as how does it change the way I create music, I think it has a lot to do with time and perspective, meaning I look at it as an advantage because some people say, oh, you have kids and all of a sudden your life is over. But And at that, being pregnant with twins, it's like, oh yeah, your life is super over. But for me, it's like the only thing that changes is my time management, obviously, and perspective. Now I have more to write about as I experience, as I walk into motherhood, I have more things to write about. So now I can become even more relatable because now I have a different kind of demographic that I can reach. You know, now I like to, like I said, my music, I wanted to touch all avenues of life, but now I have an addition. Now I can touch mothers, for example.
That's
so
beautiful.
Pretty much that's the only thing I feel like will change, but that's a plus at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're literally performing a miracle. Like, I always say, I'm like, if someone doesn't believe in God, I'm like, do you know that you were born? Like, that is a miracle. Like, and it's so amazing that. And so you found out it was two. So you thought, like, how did that feel? Because I know a lot of people just pray for one. So and then it's like, what you got to, like, how did that feel?
So it was shocking, and to this day, I'll be honest, it still surprises me, and I think it'll still surprise me after I give birth. But it was kind of like, wow, God, like you really entrusted me to be able to be a vessel to these two human beings, and you've trusted me to raise them in your ways, and you know, and I was like, wow, you saw something in me. And I think it just surprises me all the time to be able to, and it's something I never want to take for granted, to be able to carry two human beings, knowing that, wow, this was double the blessing. This was unexpected, and it was double the blessing. So.
That's so amazing. That's like the most beautiful thing to just, and that's, wow. That's so cool. So this is just, you know, there's even more going on. Of course, you guys, you started something called the Double Arrows of Grace. Maybe kind of give us, like the backstory of that and what that is really all about.
So Double Arrows of Grace actually originated while I was on the sofa with my husband now, but then boyfriend. It was a way for him to kind of provoke me to write more while he played guitar, because he self-teaches himself guitar. So he would just play like instrumentals, and I would just incorporate whatever I had written in my journal. So with that, we ended up brainstorming, like, what if this is a way that we can use just even impromptu worship and poetry, spoken word poetry, or just regular poetry, and use this as a platform to get God's word out there, and also be able to incorporate inspirational and motivational videos on topics, especially topics as a couple, things that couples deal with, or things that we as individuals in all walks of life deal with, like fear and doubt and you know, anxiety and things like that. So with Double Arrows of Grace, it came about just in the living room, just like that. Like, okay, how much more can we do? And then, of course, we, you know, created the shirts, like IAM Family has the shirts and whatnot. And the idea of Double Arrows of Grace, it was something that just came to me, the name. I was thinking of names, and I was like, Grace. So him and I both were representation of God's grace over our lives. And for arrows, for me, arrows always have destinations as well as different directions that they can go. So the idea of the arrow is that you could take it any direction that you want, but at the end of the day, your destination is to fulfill to be that platform for people to see God's work in your life.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I remember when you guys started it, and it's great to just see the growth of everything, just from, you know, the I probably started going to CUHOW when I did go to CUHOW. That was probably around when you started. So to just kind of see, just a year and a half later, it's, with an album, with, being pregnant with everything, getting married, like, it's been probably an amazing ride for you.
It's been like a roller coaster, but like the fun kind, not the scary kind.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I know this is probably a tough one, but do you have a favorite verse from the Bible?
I do have a go-to verse.
Yeah.
Let me see. So let me see here. It's Isaiah 43:2. And what it says is, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you.
That's amazing. Why is that your go-to?
It's motivational when you're going through dark times, like we're going through right now in the world. Just walking through waters, waters can be murky, water can be clear. You never know, and you may lose your balance along the way, but know that God is always with you. And going through fire, again, going through trials, tribulations, you won't be burned because you know already who's walking with you. So it's just a reminder of God's presence in your life in the midst of your storms, in the midst of your struggles. And I think it's important to, even in the good and the bad, it's important to be reminded that he's always there.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
It's a great one. So it's so great. Maybe you could just let people know where they could find you, where they could find Double Arrows, where they could catch I Am Familia.
So
where they could tune in and follow your journeys.
So you can find me on Instagram at iDropPsalms. So it's IDROPPSALMS. Yes, on Instagram. Double Arrows, I believe, is at double arrows _of grace on Instagram. Which I think on my page I have like a link that can direct you, or vice versa. There's a link that will direct you to mine. And I Am Familia, he changed the way it is because it's like Roman numerals now.
Yeah.
So, but I can't even tell you off the top of my head that one. If you search I Am Familia.
I have it. It's
okay.
www.im and then mmxvii.com. That's
There you go.
AMMXVII.com. And it's been a great week. Frank also dropped his album, Book of Frank. Make sure to go get that everywhere. Make sure to go get that Bri Cruz Mirrors. You did an amazing job with this project, Bri.
Thank you.
Do you see yourself, maybe where do you see yourself like a year from now with your dreams and your goals and everything?
Good question. I see myself working on more albums as well as more collabs. Like I mentioned before, I do want to work on a worship album in the works. I know I Am Familia. We're going to be working on an album together featuring all of us. There's been talks of that in the works. Working on singles. I still want to keep on writing. Again, my perspectives are going to change as I journey through motherhood. That's pretty much, I see myself still making music. I don't see myself walking away from it. I know that this is something I was born to do, and I'm going to keep on striving towards it. And just speak of my journey to other people and continue motivating and inspiring them.
That's amazing. I'm definitely going to be following the journey. Everyone of the Type 88 fam, make sure to go support Bri Cruz. Get that new album. Get that new book of Frank by Frank Nitti. Support Double Arrows of Grace. Stop by CUHOW. What time is service every Sunday?
Right now, with everything going on, they actually changed the times to 3 p.m. and we're actually using Fig's Church.
Okay.
But our normal, when everything resumes back to normal, it's 11 a.m. Sundays, and it's 195 Daniel Lowe Terrace, Staten Island, in the St. George area.
Yeah, if you're missing out on family vibes, go there. You will instantly be filled up. Amazing church. You're doing an amazing job, Bri. You always have our support at Type 88. Please keep us in the loop anytime you drop some new projects or new songs. And you're always welcome back.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So if you're out there, guys, make sure to subscribe. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We are also on YouTube. All you got to do is search Type 88, and make sure if you leave a review, make sure to screenshot that, send it my way. I'll send you guys some stickers and some bookmarks. And with everything going on in the world right now, I will be praying for everyone daily. You guys are all on our prayers, and we wish you guys a safe and happy weekend. And don't stop dreaming, y'all.